Anubhav Sinha, and our moderator will be Srimati Ratnattama Sengupta, and we are having with us the chairman of KIF, Sri Raj Chakraborty. Now, Sri Chakraborty, I am requesting you to offer on behalf of KIF to Sri Anubhav Sinha the flower bouquet. Thank you. Please offer. Thank you.
Harish.
This is for Raj. I'm requesting Ratnattama to please start this seminar session and to say something and introduce Mr. Sinha. And please fasten your seatbelt and let's wait for the next session. Good luck.
Before I go on to Anubhav Sinha, a little bit about why I'm riveted to be here today. I may have been about 4 then. My father was the screenwriter for a film called Sujata. I didn't know it was a cinema, I didn't know anything about anything. I just was a part of the family that was watching the premiere of the film. And well, hardly anything really mattered except one scene where an elderly lady who was very much like my grandmother, wearing a white sari, a widow grandmother figure, she comes, she picks up a baby, cuddles the baby, and then she utters a word, Achut, and throws the baby across. I don't know whether anything had registered at that point. I didn't know that something had registered at that point. But years later, when I became a journalist, I started writing on cinema, about cinema, doing so many other things of cinema, including curation. I look back and I realized the impact of cinema. That one word, Achut, and that one image of an elderly grandmother woman throwing a child, that word should not exist. Somewhere a child of 4 had registered in the mind. And then the other day I was watching Article 15. And if I could, I would replay that one scene for you where the officer, the IAS, Aishwan Khurana Ayan, he is being introduced to a bunch of people who are surrounding him. And he keeps asking, so you are so-and-so Brahmin? He says, no, he's not. He's a lower caste Brahmin. My lower caste Brahmin? I mean, there are hierarchies amongst hierarchies. So even the topmost has a lower and a topper. So this is a kind of India that my father's name I will come up with once more, Nabendu Ghosh. He was making a film called Mahila Aanchal. For many years, he went on, he made it, but about 80% and the film was abandoned. Now, the relevance of the film is this was written by Phanishwanath Renu, whose centenary we are still going through. And it again deals with this same thought that the Aanchal of Bharat Mata is still Mahila, and we need to keep cleanse it of this dhabba called casteism. Now, but Anubhav has gone beyond that. I mean, he's launched his own production house, and what are the themes he has dealt with? Casteism, religious discrimination, gender discrimination. One scene from each film sticks on. I won't go to the ones beyond that because I am not techno-savvy to talk enough about Ra1. What axis? Please, I don't know the words. I'm not going to spell them out. But thappad. The boss says that you were angry with me, but you hit your wife in front of everybody. That one statement, it could come only from a man. But this is what we've been looking for. I'm not a feminist, but yes, why are wives taken for granted? I mean, why is it a wife gets the thappad and when the man cannot take it out on the boss? Again, Mulk. You going to see Mulk, or has it been screened already? So you all know that one bad apple gives the entire family, not just dhappa, the humiliation, the sorrow, the pains of being isolated from even the men and women who have seen them since their birth. What kind of trauma is that? All these lead us to one thing, one theme, and that, I think, is the theme Anubhav will expound over the next hour. That is the social relevance of cinema. Anubhav, you made an innocuous entry with a rom-com. Well, not exactly a rom-com, more significant than that. Even that had Desh, Pardesh, all those angles which we've seen in so many blockbusters. But since then, your journey has taken you more and more gradually, perhaps also subtly, and more angrily into what is wrong with society. Please, we will expect you to tell us more about that. And also about how difficult or how rewarding it is to make films like that.
Thank you, all of you. Thank you, ma'am, for being so kind. Thank you for coming during these trying times. The pandemic, no one knows if it's really that serious or not. The debate is still on, as it's probably being controlled. We'll have the vaccine soon. I've always loved coming to Kolkata, but strangely, every time I'm here, I'm rushing out. And so is the case this time. I'm heading to my shoot, which starts in a couple of weeks in SM. And so there's one line that I'm very tempted to say. Please don't laugh at that line. It's an often misused line. Bengal se mera bachpan ka rishta hai. So a little bit about my love, fascination, respect for Bengal. I was born in Banaras, and I don't remember how I can speak a bit of Bengali and understand a little more than that. So don't crack any jokes about me which are not legal. I'll know what you're saying. But so, providence that I have had at every stage of my life. I've had a Bengali friend, and during my engineering college, a roommate for 6 years. And so today I'm really nervous speaking here. I have known of Bengali intellectuals who take things seriously, who read, who watch. My earliest memories of Kolkata or West Bengal would be knowing that this is a place where probably the first time, correct me if I'm wrong, ma'am, that art films were patronized by the audiences in the theaters. And no wonder some of the greatest from the country ever came from this part of the country. So I'm very nervous about every word that I'm going to say. And in this whole process, I think the biggest reason why I thought that I must come here and attend this festival was the fact that this is probably my only opportunity when Mr. Satyajit Ray's name and my name will be written in the same sentence. Otherwise, we belong to different books or maybe different libraries. But this is where the only time I'll get this opportunity. And so I immediately grabbed it and I thought so it's not going to be a lecture. I don't think I'm qualified to give a lecture on anything but food. But that's not the subject today. So we will keep it like a conversation. I'll talk to her. I'll talk to you people. I was looking at, I was in the pre-production of my film and very busy. So one day my assistant asked me, the organizing committee wants to know the subject of the conversation, of the lecture. So I said, let's do it politics in cinema, mainstream cinema. So, and then I thought, no, let's not make it politics, let's keep it social responsibility. And so that's how it became, what it became. And then on my flight to Kolkata, the day before yesterday, I started thinking, what am I going to talk about it? So I took out my iPad and I wrote the line, social responsibility and mainstream cinema. And I just kept looking at that line and I thought that, I'll answer your question now.
Yes.
So I thought, okay, let's define every word of this sentence. What is social? What is society? In Bombay, 3 apartment buildings are called a society. So it can be that society. How do you define society? When I was studying in the engineering college, I had a lot of Bengali friends. And at that point, we make fun of all the Bengali friends. Because whenever they were together, they would speak in Bengali. They had this, which I later came to understand and realize and recognize as conserving your traditions and culture and your ethnicity. Their Bengali food, their Bengali singers, their Bengali songs, their Bengali cinema, they were very proud of it. And we used to make fun of it. And they used to vehemently and violently defend it. So for me, the general perception, the general virus in the DNA was that the mainland India, which spoke Hindi, which is UP, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Punjab, Rajasthan, that was India, and rest of that was regional India. So I was wondering, what is society? Is my family, where does the definition of society begin? Does it begin at home, and where does it end? Does it end at the political boundaries of India, or does it even go to Pakistan and Bangladesh and Iran and Kuwait and maybe to America, to Canada? We were brought up with this beautiful line, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which is easier said than followed, that the whole world is your family, the whole world is your society. That is something to be recognized by individuals. Different people will have different definitions of society. So when I was talking about our Bengali friends, it used to feel like, Indians, but someone else. And, I was 16, 17 then, 17. And then, slowly you started growing up and you realize that, no, it's more than that. My society actually goes there. And much later did I realize that conserving your culture, your traditions, your local traditions, is actually, much later we heard a term when we started making films, was more local it is, more global it is. And that's when one started respecting people, that if you respect your local traditions, if you keep them alive, and that's what makes this diverse country called India. So for me, society is not only my family or my state, or only Hindi speaking people. It actually extends beyond that. And as I grew older, I got closer to that line that I was taught as a child, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, that the idea of society actually extends to the entire mankind. But maybe that's an age thing. So, looking at that line, I was trying to define the meaning of society for myself so that I could understand the meaning of the entire sentence, social responsibility in mainstream cinema. And then the other word came up, responsibility. So what is responsibility? And what is the difference between duty and responsibility? Every child is taught differently about his or her duties while growing up. A lot of homes, like I would talk about mine, was obviously a patriarchal society, was taught to look after my sisters, look after my mother, seeing at home that my father did not disrespect my mother ever, while I saw it outside of my home. I think that's somewhere Thappad is rooted, that I constantly felt disturbed every time I saw and heard that a woman was being treated disrespectfully. So that was taught to me as a duty, that you have to be responsible towards your family. At that point, it was limited to family and maybe extended family and not even neighbors. So the extension of, like I said, the definition of society for me was evolving as I was growing up. As I left home and I went to a hostel, I met more people there from different religions, from different ethnicities. To begin with, there was a resistance to treat them as family, like I said, Bengalis, and there were Somalian friends, and there was an Afghanistani friend. I was in Aligarh Muslim University. So, there were friends from Africa, there were friends from, a lot of friends from the Middle East. So my definition for society was expanding, and so was my definition of duty was expanding and was becoming responsibility. Duty, I was beginning to understand, was something that I was bound to do, I was supposed to do, and responsibility was something that I would take on, which may not be a part of my prospectus or protocol, but I felt for. And then, I had a Palestinian friend, and and at that point, you knew of, Yasser Arafat as this iconic guy who was fighting for his freedom. One didn't know. I was 17, 18, from UP, doing my engineering, not reading much of literature or history or culture, or I was reading fluid mechanics, and I was reading designing machines. And you heard about inequality, you heard about people and children not being treated right, civil societies being bombed and people being killed, and people killing themselves to express. That is where, while you were hearing of these things, you were thinking that what is going on in this world? And the moment you started caring about them, you started feeling responsible towards them, and you started feeling a bit duty-bound towards them. This was when my idea of society and responsibility was extending. It was crossing boundaries. So that, becomes society and responsibility. And then the next chapter is when you put the two words together, social responsibility. And then it becomes about feeling responsible for the entire race. So, just for an extreme example, there was this man in South Africa who was thrown out of a train for not being white, and he took it upon himself to fight it, and he came back to India, and he found his own method of fighting, and he did fight it to the end. in the process, one large nation called India got its freedom from an empire. He lost his life. So, you know, his idea of society and responsibility extended to a point where it started with fighting for Indians in South Africa and then coming back to India and fighting for the entire country with his own method. So that, to me, is the extreme example of feeling responsible for the society and in the process giving up his life. And once you talk about social responsibility, I'll come to social responsibility in mainstream cinema a little later. Once you become that person who starts to feel socially responsible, and I just gave you an example of an individual who went beyond all limits to fulfill his social responsibilities, we get to a point where because any responsibility has a cost. So when your mother tells you that you have to look after your sister, so it starts at dividing the halwa at home between you and your sister equally and maybe giving her a little more. So that's a price you pay. You give it to her first and you give her a little extra. It starts with as little as that, and it can go up to a point where Gandhi gives up his life. Or maybe more, you know, Mandela lives in a prison for decades. Now that is a cost, and the cost will vary depending on the kind of responsibility you choose to take on. How do you evaluate that cost? A lot of times you will not know the cost that you will pay. And you know there will be a cost to be paid. So it's like walking into an expensive restaurant, not knowing if I have enough money to buy this food. But you go there and for some reason you're duty bound to do that, and you do that. So it's like a black hole. Once you walk into that, you will not know where your heart will take you, how far it will take you, and what are the prices you will have to pay on the way. This is a mindset that you own up, that you think should be my mindset. And you walk into that dark black hole, dark tunnel, and you keep doing things that you think are right on the way. So everybody will have different, so then it's not, I don't think it any longer is about your capacity as to how much you can afford to do. Not only in terms of the cost you'll have to pay in terms of maybe not doing a job and doing this which will not pay me, so that's a financial cost. But then there could be risks involved, and there could be, I was here just now, somebody came to me, he said, can I talk to you for a minute? And he quickly said that, you know, love your films and all of that, but it could be dangerous for your life. He was just saying this out of love. So look after yourself, please look after yourself. And he went away. I didn't even see his face, he was wearing a mask. Maybe he's here. So, now that's scary. A stranger walks up to you and says that your life could be in danger for what you're doing. And I hear this a lot of times. But, so that is something that you need to figure out for yourself. Now that's about affording. I have a 19-year-old son. I wouldn't want to die very soon. I would want to be with him for a long time. But that keeps bothering you on the way, as you're doing things and you know, you're taking on stuff which you can afford to not take on. So that's a cost that every individual decides to pay or not. And then the last two words in the subject of the lecture, which it is not, is mainstream cinema. So I asked myself, what is mainstream cinema? There are no certain answers, there's no definite answers. I don't think there are many countries in the world where they have regional cinemas. A cinema that's made for that region only. So Bengali films will play in Bengal, Tamil films will play in Tamil, Telugu films play in Andhra, Malayalam films in Kerala. So what is, and Hindi films out of Bollywood. So what is mainstream cinema? So a fantastic Bengali film which would never play in Bombay for all the other mainstream theaters, isn't that a mainstream film? I don't know. That's the caste politics of film watching. I wonder why. So the studio systems of Hollywood cracked it better than us. Their films. So was Titanic supposed to be a film that would be watched in Bihar, interior Bihar? No. They found a way to do it. So now they dub their films in Bengali and Bihari, Bhojpuri and Tamil and Telugu and Punjabi, which is not a very heavy cost to pay. But now Hollywood films are more democratically watched across the country than our own films. So aren't Malayalam films mainstream films? I don't know. They should be, right? Shouldn't Bengali films be mainstream films? But they're not. Why? It again boils down to the Brahminism of languages in India. Hindi. Hindi becomes the mainstream, and within that there is hierarchy, like there is Karnikupri Brahman and there is, what was the other one? Forgotten. Anyway, there are too many Brahmins. So within Hindi films also there are some which used to be called art house, new wave and whatever not. And then there is mainstream cinema. So is Article mainstream cinema, Article 15, or Dabang, or both? Nobody knows. So does the box office success of a Hindi film decide whether it's mainstream cinema or not? Yesterday I had this bit of an argument on Twitter, which I have decided I'll not talk about politics on Twitter, but that's a bit of film politics going on there. So there's this beautiful small film that is released, and one critic calls it a commercial disaster. And I'm trying to understand, how does he know if it's a commercial disaster? So I asked him on Twitter, please define commercial disaster and please prove that it's a commercial disaster. So, weren't films supposed to be stories to be told that would touch you, or that would make you laugh, or that would make you cry? What does the term mainstream cinema mean? I could not answer this, but while I was trying to explore this term, I was thinking, what is mainstream cinema? Was Nayakan mainstream cinema or not? It was a Tamil film. Everyone knows of it. A lot of you must have seen it. Most of you are film enthusiasts, filmmakers. But for someone living in Assam, is Nayakan mainstream cinema for him? That is the beauty of this country, right? That, we are such a diverse country, and my next film is about diversity, so hence it's called Anek. So I have a lot to say about that, which I'm saying in the film. So I could not answer this question to myself, and this time the flight came a little faster, so I didn't get enough time. So we'll together explore it today. And then we come to the point that ma'am asked me. So I will tell you my journey of starting to make films in 2001 to 2019, when I released Thappad. I released Thappad in end February, 2 weeks before the lockdown. 2 weeks before the lockdown. I made Tumbin, which was a romantic, mushy musical that people loved and all, To me, I was an engineer, worked as an engineer for a year, figured out I wasn't enjoying it, and I was 24. And I wanted to know what I wanted to do. So I gave myself a year, struggled, worked around to find out what I wanted to do, and I was lucky to figure out that I wanted to make films. And then I came to Bombay. And then I worked my way in. This is 91, and took me about 9 years, 10 years, that I got to make my first film called Tumbin. And at that point, it was all about making a film. So I got a phone call from the head of a music label, and he said, would you make a film for me? And I said, yeah, sure, that's why I came to Bombay. The only condition that he gave me was you have to have 8 songs. So I said, okay. So I wrote a...
That, by the way, was one of the definitions of mainstream. So many songs. So many songs, so much of villain, so much of Helen, all that. These were so many number of songs was one of the definitions of mainstream cinema at one point of time.
Yeah, it was. So that was the only condition I was given. I made that film and it became a hit. My producer made money. Most of the big actors' wives saw the film first. So they told their husbands or boyfriends that you must watch this film, nice, good director and all. So the stars got interested in me and they were happy to work with me. Then I started making more projects. And I went up to a point where I made the biggest film with the biggest star in the country, and I made a bad film out of that. And I reached a point where I was wondering whether I was a director at all. And on the verge of quitting and becoming a producer or maybe do something else, I chanced upon this news piece where a terrorist boy, a boy who committed a terrorist act, was killed in the police encounter, and when the police sent his dead body to his father, the father refused to accept the dead body. This happened in Kanpur, near Lucknow. That was a very disturbing piece of news for me. And I was born in Banaras, which is a perceived Hindu society, and I grew up in a Hindu society where Muslims were, we never said this, but they were outside of us. And then I went to study in Muslim University, Aligarh Muslim University, where I was minority. There were not many Hindus at that point, more Muslims. And I found friends, and I found wonderful people, and I found wonderful nationalist people, patriots there. And my mind opened up to them. And so that's where my idea of society began to expand. And I started to include more people in my definition of society, whether it was Muslims, or it was Africans, or it was Palestinians, or it was Pakistanis, or Bangladeshis. So I was sensitive towards this when I read that news. I knew that the father not accepting his son's dead body has to be a very big decision. He has to be in massive disagreement with his son. And I thought this story had to be told. And I wrote that story. So I wrote that story and I read it out to, it was like 1 page or something. And I read it out to a lot of my friends and my seniors. The first person I told that story to was Sudhir Mishra, who's a friend, who's a brother, who's a guru. And he said, you must make it immediately. And I remember another friend from Kolkata, Shujit Sarkar. I met him, I told him that story, just bouncing it off. And he heard half the story, he said, sir, foreign manado, foreign manado. I said, puri to sun le. Hear the whole thing. He said, no, I know what you're doing. I know what you're saying. Please make it now. And then a lot of other friends said, don't make this film. This is 2017. And 16 end. And this is the time when people are telling me that the country doesn't want to hear this story. You will not get any money to make this film. You will not get any actors to do this film. Which was a little shocking for me. But that story was bothering me so much. And this is where my idea of my definition of responsibility was probably expanding, that I was willing to pay that cost of making it at any cost. So I remember over a weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I sat down and I ended up writing the entire script, the first draft of the script. And I sent it out. I remember I finished it about 3:30 in the morning, Monday morning. And I sent it out to all the friends that I was talking to. So when they woke up, then I went to sleep. And when they woke up, they found the script of the story that they heard like 5 days back as a script in their inboxes. So they were mighty impressed and they felt compelled and obliged to read it quickly. So by the time I woke up, I had responses pouring in from friends. So I had sent out like 10 people. And by that evening, everybody was telling me, everybody who was saying don't make this film, was saying no, please make this film as soon as you can. It is coming straight from your heart. So the most wonderful response to that script came was, it's a very sweet film. So I don't know how many of you have seen Mulk, but you can't call Mulk a sweet film. So I said, what do you mean? It's not a sweet film at all. So she said, no, it's sweet because it comes straight from your heart. This is where the question that you asked, that transition was probably taking place out of the sheer need of an individual to talk about this, to talk about his society. And like all my industry friends had warned me, it will be difficult to find money for that film. It was very difficult to find money for that film. While Rishi Kapoor and Taapsee Pannu were prepping in the office, there were costume trials going on and stuff. I did not have the money to make the film. So every morning I would go out looking for the money for meetings, and every evening I would come back without it. While everybody was excited and everybody was prepping for the film, they were trying to get ready for the film. And finally, Mr. Deepak Mukut, thanks to him, he did not even read the script. He said, you seem so convinced and you seem so possessed by it. Someone please help me.
Hello.
Hello, sir.
I interviewed you, your debut film
Yeah.
at Park Hotel,
Wow.
Priyanshu Chatterjee.
Yes, sir.
Let him just
I want to ask you a question.
let him finish.
Okay, please. I'm all ears.
So then the money came in and we went and made that film and the film released. And now when I look back, I did not know it then. That was a socially responsible film in the realm of mainstream cinema. We will discuss what mainstream cinema is a little later, though it did not have songs and all. There were opportunities to have songs, but I did not keep songs in the film. And so that's where it, and when the film released and the kind of love and affection I got from the society, quote unquote society, got me really more and more interested in talking about my society. And so the next film was Article 15, and again, Article 15, I thought of the idea and I was sitting in my office and I was telling people that let's make this film. So my office said, no sir, but this is a thing of the past, no, it doesn't happen anymore. So why it will be dated? And the moment they said it's a dated film, I said, no, we must make it now. It is so important to make it now. So that's how that film happened. And then Thappad, about Slap. So that's why my journey of that trajectory of making Tum Bin, Das, Cash, Ravan, Mulk, Thappad. That's a fairly long answer, no?
Waiting to hear some more.
So that is, and then, now talking about social responsibility in mainstream cinema, and rewards are byproducts. I was shooting a scene in Thappad where if you guys remember that scene where he's preparing his project and his internet is not working and his printer is not working and he's telling her to do things that, you know, your internet is not working and your printer is not working. And, you know, we were rehearsing and I suddenly looked at it and I started laughing. I said, it's such a cruel scene. But it's not. It's a very ordinary scene in any other Bollywood film. Because you do treat women like that, right? The responsibility of everything at home, people getting food on time, to the internet working, to the laundry man getting his bill sorted, is all about the woman. The man brings in the check, but he doesn't realize that if the other machine refuses to function, he will not be able to get out to bring the check in. So, you know, like mainstream cinema then apparently becomes about the box office success. The power becomes about the money, about the check, and not about the person, the individual who's running lives. So I was thinking when I was shooting that scene, to me it's a very funny scene. I laugh at that scene. That man is so stupid. But in any other mainstream film, it's a very normal scene. So talking about, for another example, I was playing with a dog this morning and I ended up calling him a kutta. Now kutta should not be a derogatory term. But Dharamji says that so well, kutte mein tera phone. So anybody who's a bad guy is a kutta. No, why? Why should kutta be bad? Kutta is a dog. Weak. Sewer. Why should sewer be bad? Okay, sewer at least plays in filth.
The Prophet said, love all animals.
So, Gadha, बेचारा इतनी मेहनत करता है हमारे लिए, गधा derogatory है. Now this is something that we have, mainstream cinema has propagated very successfully. ये मैं औरतों वाले काम नहीं करता, औरतों वाले काम खराब होते हैं क्या? पर हम ये बात कह देते हैं और हमने इसको normalize कर दिया है. Now, you know, there's 1 million such things which are in our DNA, and you know, we inadvertently keep propagating such abuses, let's call it. And so there is issue-based films according to me. So let's say Article 15 is an issue-based film, Thappad is an issue-based film, but there is that mainstream cinema which is not an issue-based film, which is not issue-based films, which is fine. There have to be funny films, there have to be entertaining films, there have to be non-issue thrillers. You know, you want to just unwind. And you know, I was thinking of Tom and Jerry. Beautiful, but it's about violence. And guess who produced it? America. They're the most peace-loving people, though the myth is getting broken these days. So, you know, we have inadvertently normalized a lot of things which I think we should start feeling more responsible about. And we should start maybe normalizing better things in our the objectification of not only women, even men. Look at those 8-packs, look at those 6-packs, and look at those waistlines and bikinis. Objectification, it is normalized and it is bound to affect the society, and it does. So I feel there is, so not every filmmaker has to be making issue-based films or films which are socially responsible. You know, there could be films which are absolutely just fun. I love Rohit Shetty's films. Seriously. Madness, I love No Entry. Madness, though it's quite misogynistic, but yeah, it's a lot of fun. So, and then there is issue-based films. Now the issue-based films again can have a very large trajectory which I am constantly fighting as a filmmaker. So you want to make a film about an issue. You want to tell a story about an issue about something that you think is an issue with the society. Now how far do you go? in the sense that, there's a very thin line between being an issue-based filmmaker and an activist. Now, do those films indulge in activism, or they're just films? So normally my personal approach, my personal attempt is to make sure that I bring the discussion to the table. I don't think I have the answers. Nobody has the answers. The society as collectively has the answers. But I try to bring the discussion to the table. People talk about it. I could be wrong. Maybe what I said in the film is wrong. But if it ends up inducing, stoking a discussion, I think I have done my job. Like in Article 15, there was this shot of this man coming out of the manhole. So we decided in the beginning that that will be the only slow-mo shot in the film. So we sacrificed all other opportunities in the film where we could have had slow-mo shots, because we wanted that shot to have such terrible impact on you that, so apparently it did have eventually that impact. There are people who have come to me and said, they're filmmakers and audiences and friends who have come and said that shot is unbearable. It haunts you, it stays with you. Now that is what, to me, an issue-based film should do, that it should bother you. But at the same time, it should engage with you. I would not want to make an issue-based film that's just a niche audience has seen, which already agreed with me. And I'm very, very happy that a film like, say, Thappad or an Article 15, where teenagers were talking about. So at the premiere of Article 15, my son was 17 or 18 then, and his friends had come. Now they come to see a premiere, it's an event, there'll be movie stars there are directors there, all the razzmatazz. So they come to all my film premieres, and they come and they watch the film, and they come and they thank me and they congratulate me and they leave. But I remember after Article 15, so there were 6 screens, and every screen started after the other. So the first screen they were in, the movie got over, they came and met me, and then they hung out with me. So the second screening got over, they were still with me. The third screen got over, they were still with me. So I asked them, I said, guys, all good? So they said, no uncle, it's very heavy, we don't want to leave, we want to be with you. Now these were 17, 18-year-old kids, and that gave me so much happiness that I managed to touch 17-year-olds with the issue of caste discrimination in our society, in our country. To me, it ends there. But there have been films that I have been a fan of, that go beyond this, that try to go beyond this. I'm still not there. I don't know if I will ever be there. But then these are individual choices. Every filmmaker, every writer will look at his responsibility or his degree of activism through his films. But I have so far, even in my next film, I find myself stopping at stoking a discussion, stoking a conversation. And that's where it is. And there are prices to be paid. The rewards are immense. So when we were shooting Thappad, talking about rewards, so Taapsee used to keep laughing at me. She said, every time we would shoot a good scene, she would laugh and she'd come and tell me that I'm waiting to be at the premiere at the lobby of the premiere, where women will queue up to give you a hug. So I thought that was wishful, and she was being sweet to me and nice to me and all. But during the premiere of the film, they would come to me, they would hug me and they would cry inside. And actually there was a queue. These are 5 women. Of them, one is a big actress. So they want to give a hug. There was guys who, a director friend of mine. So he's coming out of his screening and he's looking at me smiling and he's pretending to be walking off. And I was like, at least talk to me, say, if you like it or you don't or what. So he shook my hand and he was going away. So I held his hand and pulled him back and I said, what? Don't like it? He said, no, I have to go say sorry to somebody. So I'm going. And he was almost in tears. So I said, oh, sorry. So he went away. So these are the rewards. And then there are challenges when a stranger stops you in the middle of the street and he says, sir, your life could be in danger. No, that is the flip side of it. And you're constantly aware because, when Article 15 was releasing, I got a call from the Commissioner's office in Bombay and they said, we are giving you some security. And I said, what do you have? So I got scared. I said, is there a threat? What? Have you heard something or just like that? So they didn't respond to it. They said, no, just connect. There's a guy under your house. Connect him to your driver. That's all. You don't need to do anything. Don't need to worry about anything. So I said, okay. So I gave him my driver's number. So my driver, and then there was this police jeep that would drive ahead of me or behind me. There were some 2-3 cops sitting at the reception of my office. And then 3-4 days later, they disappeared. So it was scary. My son was a little worried. He was saying, no, don't step out and all. And so, there were people were threatening that it's an anti-Brahmin film, and they wanted to cut my head off, and they were openly threatening to cut my tongue off and cut my, I don't know what not. Now that is a zone which is, sometimes you reject it, sometimes you get scared, and you hope that nothing happens. I have told my driver taught my driver to how to deal with it if something untoward was to happen, and we'll deal with it if it happens. So I don't know if I'm being wise or I'm being brave or I don't know what, but I feel I have to make these films. I have to say this. I have to. So I am a certified anti-national on Twitter and Facebook, and but I feel I love my country, and I think that's what matters. What I feel about my country, and I feel compelled to talk about it. When a film like Article 15, which is such a dry film to my opinion, I never made it to be a hit. When we were making the film, Ayushmann Khurrana's film were doing 100 crores, 150 crores, 125 crores. I knew I wasn't making a mainstream popular film. So I was preparing my lead actor that, listen, this will do 35, 40 crores. It's not a film that will do big numbers. It ended up doing close to 70 crores, which is huge, according to me. But it's coming with it, a lot of its rewards, and I still feel there's a lot, many more things that I want to talk about. At least, I feel responsible to tell people that we need to talk about these things. We need to stop looking Bengalis as Bengalis and Punjabis as Punjabis and Malayalis as Mallus. And it's so simple to call Kashmiris Pakistanis, no? Because the media loves to talk like that, if at all there's a media in this country. And, so we are dividing the country in our conversations. We are telling them off. We are dissuading them from being Indians. And we are expecting chest-thumping nationalism from them. And I feel compelled, I feel obliged, so I spoke about the numbers of Article 15 because then my distributor told me that roughly 6 to 7 million people have gone to the theatres. Now that's a massive number. The power to talk to 7 million people and touch them is immense. And if I have that audience of those 6-7 million people, it becomes my response, and this is how I feel. maybe another person in this position would want to make an entertainer, and he won't be wrong. That would be that person. But I feel responsible to start these conversations, and yes, they will come with their rewards and they will come with their perils, and you will deal with it. Yeah, that's all I had to say. I was telling Mayuk, my friend who's sitting here, that I'm so scared about the session today. My son has been messaging me. Is it over? Has it started? He knows I'm nervous about it, but I hope I have sounded, intermittently made some sense, and I'm happy to explore this with you. So let's talk to each other. Let this be a conversation. I don't know if we have arrangements to give you the mics, but yes, we'll be happy to.
Yes, we do have an arrangement to bring the mic, but before the mic gets grabbed by my friends there, I have a question for you. Two, if you may permit. One is about your casting. You spoke about Ayushmann Khurrana, you spoke about Taapsee Pannu, but when you were casting them, were they stars? Because I noticed in most of your films, the other actors, most of the actors are not names that would draw people. So is that because the characters would then become, identified stars, or is that because your budget is more workable if you don't have big names, or is that a calculation, or is that a necessity?
A bit of both. So with Mulk, I had budgetary constraints, and serious budgetary constraints. But I have been around long enough, and they say I'm a good friend, so they gave it back to me. So whosoever I went to gave me concessions and chose to work on the film for a lesser fees. Ever since, I've been privileged of actors coming to me and saying that I want to do this film. So Article 15 got made because Ayushmann pushed me to make it. I never saw Ayushmann in that part. I thought he wouldn't be good enough for that part as an actor, and he pushed me. I called him, he called me to say how much he loved Mulk, and I called him to play a small part in another film that I was going to make, which I never made. Ayushmann didn't let me make it. So he said, Sarhag, I'll do this film, but do something intense with me, socially relevant. So I had this story, which I did not see him in, and I told him that story. So he held my hand and he said, can I read it? And I said, yeah, but I don't see you in it. And he was a star, he was a big star. So I gave him the script reluctantly, and he read the script and he said, I won't let you make any other film. You will have to make this film, and you will have to make it with me. And then slowly I got convinced, and I started seeing him in the part. The rest of the cast, as you speak about, there are two actors who I feel I can't make movies without. One is Manoj Pahwa and one is Kumud Mishra. And I'll tell you why. When you walked into the room, the big VIP room that I sit in, I was on the phone, if you remember. So it was Kumud Mishra, the next film. And he's shooting something else. And he knows I'm here. And he's talking to me about a scene. He said, sir, that scene, no? So how would you not make films with them? You have to, right? The movie, the shooting is like...
Involvement with your friends.
Manoj Pahwa. When I was casting him in Mulk, the whole world was telling me he's a comedian. It's such an intense part. The moment he appears on screen, people will laugh and your film will fail. And I don't know why, I have believed in him. I have always worked with him in intense parts. And so I cast him. So the casting is mostly about actors who are strong enough to snatch the role away from me. So they fight, Kumud Mishra, Manoj Pahwa, these are all the fight, they will choose their part. So now I give them the scripts and say, you guys decide which one wants to play which one. So in Thappad, there was no Manoj Pahwa. So he comes to my office and he said, why? How come I am not in the film? I'll do anything, but I have to be in the film. I said, no, but there's nothing for you. What to do? So he wasn't there in the film, and so now he has a very good part in this one. So yeah, it's my casting is, I work with friends. It's not about their stardom. It is about just wanting to work with each other. Thankfully, we are all in a position right now that we attract enough money to make the films that we want to make. So it's also convenient.